filtering in, so welcome all. We're going to get started. My name is Wendy Ramson, and I am the Director of Programs and Outreach at the Michigan Association of Planning. As a reminder, MAP is the state chapter of the American Planning Association, and it is your source of professional development here in Michigan. I'm going to do some quick Zoom tips before we launch in. You're all pretty practiced at this, but we will take questions today through the chat. We may even have the opportunity to do some raised hands, so either of those options are available. We also have some questions that you posed in the application that we will get to today. If you can, turn on your videos. It's always more engaging for the presenters to see who they're talking to, but mute your microphone. And I will note that we are being recorded today, so we can share this presentation with others later on. So thank you. With that, I am going to introduce and turn it over to Jada Tillison-Love Porter, who is going to take us from here. Jada?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jada Tillison-Love Porter, like Wendy said. I am currently acting as the chair of EPP, the Emerging Planning Professionals, which for those of you who don't know what the Emerging Planning Professionals is, we're a group of, working students, entry to mid-level planners, those in non-traditional planning positions. And we really serve as a group to make that bridge between you're graduating college and you're kind of jumping into the planning profession. And so our goals are to, connect emerging planners with member services through MAP or APA, and also, get those professional development opportunities out there for you guys. And so we're open to, new participation. So hopefully those of you that are not in the EPP as of yet, come check us out and see what we're all about and join us for, our next activities. And with that, I'll go through the agenda really quick. So we will go through a presentation from Christina Anderson, who is our new Professional Development Officer with MAP. And then we'll hear and kind of get a run through of the new AICP 1 path and go through, how those changes that have been made recently. And then we'll jump into our panel Q&A. And we have 3 individuals who currently have their AICP and have gone through the process. And so we'll hear from them about their experiences. And there'll also be a chance for you to ask questions if you haven't already sent some in to us. So with that, I will introduce Christina Anderson, again, who is our new Professional Development Officer. She is the city planner for the city of Kalamazoo. And in addition to serving on the MAP board, she's also MAP Professional Development Officer. Sorry. So Christina, feel free.
Thanks, Jada. Hi, I'm Christina Anderson. As Jada said, I am the planner for City of Kalamazoo. I've been here for about 5 years. Prior to that, I worked in Chicago as a consultant. I am on the MAP board. This is my 2nd year of being a member of the MAP board, and recently took over the position of Professional Development Officer. And so what is that? So the Professional Development Officer, really their goal within the state, there's one in each state, is to help promote professional development and continuing education in our planning community. This could mean a lot of different things. It could be celebrating those who pass the AICP exam. It could be doing outreach and speaking at events like this. To kind of help support training opportunities, understanding what the different opportunities are for taking the AICP exam, and just generally bringing it, into visibility for everybody, that this is an opportunity and something that we think is important for planners to do in their careers to help continue their education so they can be the best planner that they can be. And so today we have Erin Purdue here, who's going to be talking specifically about the AICP 1 path. Erin is the planning group leader for the Midwest region at Stantec. She is also the Region 4 representative on the AICP committee, co-chair of the ethics committee, and former chair of the exam committee. So lots of great information to share with us today. She is also the treasurer for APA Minnesota. Over her 24-year career, she has worked both in both public and private sectors, spending the bulk of that time in Michigan before she left us for Minnesota in 2014. So Erin, we're really looking forward to your presentation today. And as a reminder, from what Wendy said, if you have questions, you can put them into the chat so we can ask them when Erin is done with her presentation. Thanks, Erin, for joining us today.
Sure, thanks for the kind introduction. Nice to see folks from Michigan. As Christina mentioned, I spent most of my career there before leaving just a few years ago. So happy to be back and talking with you. I'm assuming that everyone can see my screen. If I can get a couple of nods, that will be okay, great. Okay, so in my capacity on the AICP Commission, I've been through this process of redoing the certification process so that it's one path, and the goal of the whole effort was to make things much simpler for folks. So, you know, just a little plug for the credential before I get into it too much. We really believe, I would be remiss in my duties as an AICP commissioner if I didn't encourage you all to get the credential. It really does demonstrate your expertise, showing your commitment to ethics. We also recently revised the Code of Ethics. It's a really great, some really great stuff in there. If you haven't read it yet, you should. And really does help distinguish you in the job market. So as a person that hires planners, it is something that I always look for. So please consider it. We have done this one path in an effort to reduce barriers to getting your certification. And so what I want to do is walk through those changes with you. And then I think we'll have time during the panel discussion to answer questions that you have. I know there were several that were shared before the session. So we'll leave time to get to those too. Okay, so back in the dark ages when some of us took the AICP, there was, and not so long ago, the process was more complicated. There was a delay between when you got your planning degree and when you could take the AICP exam and thus get the credential. There were also essays required that describe your professional experience. The commission and the APA staff looked at this process and realized that the essay process was very subjective. It often created barriers for folks to obtain their certification. There was also inherent bias in how those essays were reviewed. And so we endeavored to try to revise that process and evaluate experience differently. So now the one path looks something like this, where your first step is to register to take the exam. And you can actually, there are 2 windows per year, April and October, where you can take the exam, but you can register anytime. You can even do it while you're still in school. You don't have to wait until you get your degree. You don't have to wait until you get the requisite experience. You can take the exam anytime. So there are 2 windows for that, April and October. Then you take the test, pass the exam, and then you are able to use the AICP candidate credential. I know a lot of folks, probably many of you, were part of the AICP candidate pilot program, where we did this. We allowed folks to take the exam early. And so if you're in the middle of that, like maybe you took the exam, but you haven't gotten the certification or vice versa, we can talk about how that transition works. But so once you take the test, you pass it, you get your AICP candidate credential. Next step is at some point to apply when you have the appropriate level of professional experience to get the credential. It doesn't have to be in the same cycle. So, you know, if you take the exam early, like right after you're done with school, you will probably have to wait a couple of years before you have the right amount of experience. So that's fine. You can use the AICP candidate credential while you're waiting. And then you fill out the experience assessment, which I will share with you. There's no time limit between when you become a candidate and when you apply your professional experience assessment. So you can wait as long as you need to do that. The AICP candidate doesn't expire. So again, you can register for the exam. It's open to all APA members, no matter how much education or experience you have. It's recommended that you understand the requirements, you review the exam content outline and use some of the resources that we have online to prepare. And you are able to schedule in-person or online remote exams during the exam window. Once you pass the exam, as I mentioned, you have that AICP candidate credential, and you remain with that credential until you get the minimum experience that you need. Before I go on to the last step, I will say that on the AICP website, there is a pretty new listing of resources that will help you prepare for the exam. Just in case some of you are looking at that and preparing for the May exam window, please know that the list of resources is not meant to be an all-inclusive list of everything you should read before you take the exam. There's a lot of resources there. And so what it's meant to do is help you focus. You know, if you look at the content outline and there are specific parts of it that you feel like you need more work on, focus on those resources that are listed under that. And those are options for you. You don't necessarily need to read them all. So don't feel like we've given you a huge reading list that if you do all that reading, you're guaranteed to pass. That's not what it's intended for. So just have to say that real quick. So then once you're done with the exam, then you apply to provide your education and experience via the criteria that are available. I think the actual application, I'm not sure if it's live now, but I believe it will be live in July. What there is on the website right now is a checklist that you can go on, work through it, and see if you have the right level of experience. It's a lot more like a checklist now than it was before. So basically, we have documented the experience you need. It pairs quite nicely with the AICP exam outline and the different areas that checking things off a list. There are some areas where you have to provide an example of your experience. So just a very short answer question, nothing like amount experience you have to have to receive the credential, and whether you're in an accredited planning program or not. There are also resources online if you happen to have a degree in something other than planning. What you actually need.
Erin?
Okay, so the experience
Erin?
assessment, we haven't, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. For some reason you're cutting in and out. I'm wondering if you might pause your video to see if that might help with the bandwidth.
Sure. Here. All right, so if my stop again if I so we haven't changed the certification requirements, so that's still the same, but we have a different method for you to provide your history. And so as I mentioned, check our skills. You can give some specific examples, but it's much more objective for you to get that information and for the APA staff to review it. So just a couple of questions before I stop talking and we get into the panel conversation. If you have questions about what's considered planning experience, check out that worksheet that's on the AICP website. There's a link in this presentation that you can click on. How much experience do you have? Again, there's an experience calculator. So if you have internships and whatnot, have questions about what kind of non-PAB planning master's degrees qualify. There's also a worksheet on planning curriculum that applies that will help you figure out whether you're eligible. A few of the common questions. I know you had a few more. If you have any specific your own, email AICP at planning.org. That will get to the professional planning staff at APA, and they can get into your specific question situation and tell you what you need. They're very quick to respond to, so I highly encourage you. And yeah, I will hang around to help answer questions.
Thanks, Erin. So again, if you want to put your questions right into the chat box, we'll go that way. And Wendy also just posted the email address again off the PowerPoint that you can send to APA for questions. So we do have one question in the chat already, and that was a question about essays. Oh, and you've already started to answer it. So do you want to elaborate on that, Erin?
Sure. Yeah, the experience assessment replaces the essays. So there are no essays required anymore. So if you have procrastinated and not gotten your credential until you're looking at it this spring, you are in luck. You don't have to do essays anymore.
And in terms of experience, experience from other states, different types of positions, say you're government now, but you were a consultant or vice versa, what counts and what doesn't count?
Yeah, generally all of that counts. So doesn't matter whether it's public, private, or even nonprofit, other agency type experience. Could be a transportation agency, could be a watershed district, something like that. Doesn't matter what state it's in, it all counts. But again, if you have questions and you want to make sure you're adding it up correctly, check out the worksheets on the website.
Sure. And when they're ready, when someone is ready to submit their worksheet, Erin, where do they go to submit that? Is there some online portal, or is it the address you gave earlier?
Yeah, the worksheet will be live on the AICP OnePath website, and I will copy that while we're chatting and put it in the chat. It's not live yet. It will be live in July through the May exam window before they make the experience worksheet available. So.
Sure. And if, I think you mentioned this, but if you could just touch on it again, if a candidate wants to, or potential exam taker wants to talk to somebody about their experience level and what they have, who would they reach out to?
Yeah, definitely use that AICP at planning.org. I know that there are 2 staff people at APA that man that. There are probably more, but there are 2 of them that I work with that will be able to either via email or schedule a phone call with you to go over that.
Okay, great. Now, what about for people who are kind of stuck in between 2 processes? So
Sure.
they need to retake the exam. They did essays before, you know, how if someone is starting, do they start over today? You know, where do people go with that?
Well, if you have taken the exam, every situation is different. So if you have a really odd situation, I would encourage you to reach out to APA staff. But in general, if you've taken the exam and you were an AICP candidate, you can go, you don't have to retake the exam. You can go ahead and submit the experience worksheet when it goes live on the website in order to qualify for the credential. You don't have to redo that. If you are at some other stage of the process, like maybe you weren't an AICP candidate, but you've done part of the process before, that's probably worth reaching out to staff to just clarify. But we're really trying not to make people redo anything.
And given the new system, the new potential, do you have a recommendation on when the best time is for someone to start the certification process? Is it before
Sure.
graduation? Is it after graduation? What would you recommend?
Yeah, I would recommend doing the process as soon after graduation as possible. I know as students, you're pretty busy on the weeks leading up to graduation. I wouldn't recommend trying to study for the exam while you're still getting your degree. But yeah, I would do it as soon as possible. I remember the hardest thing for me and others in my cohort was having to wait 2 or 3 years in order to take the exam. And so the farther you get away from school, the harder those law things, those history things are going to be. You'll have a lot more practical experience, but going back and trying to refresh your memory on all those law cases, I'd recommend you do it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I was in one of those cohorts that had to wait a few
Yeah.
years after grad school.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's another question. Do qualifying experiences start after one takes and passes the exam, or would experiences prior to taking the exam also count? And do internships count
Yeah.
if they're in the planning field?
Yeah. Internships count, and you can use any experience. So it doesn't matter whether it's before or after you take the exam. So, you know, if you graduated and you worked for a couple of years and now you're getting around to taking the exam, all that experience counts.
Okay, great. And we have a question about studying for the test. Is there anything that you could give in terms of advice for the best method or way to study?
I can't tell anyone in particular how to study because everybody learns differently. What I am trying to do right now is to bring up the website, which I'm going to pop in the chat right now. So sorry if I'm looking around here. So this is the website that you're going to want to use. Let me just share my screen real quickly here. So in order to study, you know, there are some tips for exam prep that are linked here. The first thing to do, quite honestly, is to check with your PDO. So that would be you, Christina, on the latest resources that are out there. The second most important step is to review this exam content outline. So basically you can review what kind of subject matter is going to be tested, what the weighting is of each section. So presumably you will take a look at this and you will realize that, oh, there are certain parts of this that I need to study more than others. So please take a look at this. Once you've done that, there are prep sessions that are offered around the country. So check with your PDO on those. But if you want to just access the resources that we recommend, there are a few helpful links here. The Chapter President's Council has a really good study manual that I've heard really good things about. But then in particular, let's see here. We have, so here in the exam prep training, there are, let me just see if this is where it's listed. The resource list, oh, sorry, wrong. So there are videos you can watch here. We have a list of resources that are categorized by those areas of the exam. I'm gonna look here and find that list and put it in the chat so I don't have to, you don't have to watch me scroll through it.
Sure, and I do believe that before the end of this session, Wendy is going to be sharing some information for those who are taking the exam later this year to kind of coordinate a group study program. So well, before the end, watch for that information being shared in the chat. We have another question about experience. If the experience spans over a decade or potentially more, what level of proof is required for that when you're submitting those the experience forms?
We don't require any proof. So we're not going to go back and do employment checks or things like that. So there isn't any proof required. We do ask about some specific examples, but we're not going to require any kind of employment records.
Sure. And I don't know, Erin, if you would know this or if this is something that we'll need to figure out. A question about the remote proctored exam option. And if that is limited to certain days or times, or is it kind of as you are ready, you can log in and take it?
Right. I am not sure about that. So you'd have to monitor the website when you register to get more information, or use that email and ask staff that question.
Great. And then somebody asked about a study session in May. For those who are taking the exam in May, if there's going to be any group study, and I'll let Wendy answer that a little bit later in our session. I'm not seeing any other new questions. So Erin, thank you very much. This was a lot and kind of rapid fire. So, thank you for all of this information. There'll be another Q&A at the end too. So if you think of something, you can put it in the chat and we'll try and get to it a little bit later. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Jada to introduce our panelists today.
Thanks, Erin and Christina. Yeah, so we'll jump right into our panel Q&A. Again, as mentioned before, feel free to throw any questions you might have in the chat, and we'll try to get them, answered. There was one other thing I was going to mention. Oh, this is the perfect time for you to really be able to ask the questions, especially if you're taking the exam in May because it's coming up so quick. Ask any of the questions that you have just been twiddling your thumbs about, and really hear from those who have been through the exam process already. So take advantage of this opportunity. All right, I will go ahead and have the panelists. I'm on mute. I'll go ahead and have the panelists introduce themselves. Oh, yeah, Jen, you're pinned on, so you can start first.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Yi Chen and I work as a transportation planner at AECOM. I think it's my third year. And I took and passed the exam in November 2021. And I just recently passed all the employment assessment. I got approved and become officially AICP certified earlier this month. So yeah, and should I answer those questions?
We'll have everyone go through and introduce themselves first, and then we can jump into the questions. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Elizabeth?
Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Curcio. I am the assistant planner for Plainfield Township, which is a township just outside of Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've been a planner for about 4 years, and just recently got my AICP certification in November.
And Rob?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm Rob Lynn. I'm the Director of Inventory at the City Land Bank Authority. I'm about 10 years out from my master's program, so I've been in the planning field for, I guess, 10 years now.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us today. So yeah, we'll start off with a couple of questions. Why did you decide to pursue your AICP certification? And also, what were your keys to success on the exam? Anyone want to start first?
I guess I can jump in here. I think one of the key things to being successful in your exam prep is to not rush it. Give yourself plenty of time. I studied for a month and a half, and I felt a little rushed. Just because, this isn't your full-time job anymore, probably is studying. You probably have, other obligations. So take your time, use a plethora of resources. Everything on the website is good information. I used the videos and the outlines. And I also pulled from, there are other resources listed on that website. So take your time, try not to stress out too much.
And Elizabeth, what made you decide to pursue your certification?
Well, it was something I always intended to do. I got my master's degree in urban planning, and the career opportunities that it affords you, and just to stay in touch with the planning community a little bit, stay up to date with planning trends and how it might affect your field of work. I think it's really important. Yeah.
Thanks. Rob?
Sure. I'll say I pursued AICP, I think, really for two reasons. One is sort of internal in that I wanted an opportunity to kind of refresh my skills, and I think also sort of showcase my planning background to those I work with. And it really gave me an opportunity to refresh my memory on so many of the sort of fundamental legal cases and sort of, bigger picture planning issues. I feel as though I work in a planning adjacent field, but I'm not working in planning day to day, but certainly work with a lot of land use and long range planning issues. I also, as somebody who hires a lot of planners, have found that AICP applicants are always sort of a cut above, and so really wanted to move to give preference to them. And I felt like I had to have the AICP myself in order to ask it of those I was hiring. As far as the approach I took, I think I'd really echo the other ideas thus far. I took a lot of different planning prep courses. The one that really stood out for me was offered by the Florida APA section. It's the Treasure Coast section. There's a PDO there named Henry Bedecker, who has a phenomenal multi-month course with twice weekly sessions going into a bunch of different topics. And then I also kind of employed a bit of a passive prep approach that really worked well for me, which was to, I started listening to, I started using a bunch of planning podcasts on my drive or bus ride to work, and I read a lot of planning magazines in my free time, and that really helped me on the exam as well.
Awesome. Ichen?
Why did I decide to pursue AICP? First, I think I take it as a learning opportunity for me, because I've been out of school for 2 years and I started to realize I think I need to kind of refresh my memories about what I studied at planning school, because mostly I've been working in transportation planning, but I kind of need to also still keep in touch and learn about what, give a holistic view of planning. So I take it as a learning opportunity, and I think I've also learned a lot, whether it's refreshing my memories from my past planning studies or learning something new or about the ethics code and some other law cases. And second reason is that I think working in the consulting firm, a professional license is really important. And I've also seen most of my colleagues who are at a higher level than me, most of them, they have AICP if they're planners. So I think that's something like a proof of expertise when it comes to a professional setting. And my key to success is, I would say, a study group. I also took a bunch of online resources. I took an online prep class by Plant Medicine, and I met people there and they online, and they also offered to form a study group. And I had a study group. So the study group kind of lasts for 3 or 4 months, and we had a very structured schedule. And we met twice every week to talk about our progress and to review the sample test questions and to also ask questions. And I've also used the resource offered by the Florida chapter, as Rob mentioned, and it's also very helpful. And I think he did explain a lot of the topics very clearly. And so I would say both taking advantage of the online resources, and also having a study group that kind of gives you motivation and also helps you schedule, helps you make a very effective study schedule would be my key to success.
Perfect, thank you. And I know you guys both said, you all said there was kind of some months that you study for, and I know Elizabeth, you said about a month and a half. So do you think that is the best way to go if, you know, somebody's trying to really decide if they're going to take the exam, would you suggest that they have a few months in between starting to study and taking the exam? Was that very beneficial, or, you know, because Elizabeth, you have that different experience where it's about a month, but it sounds like Yi-Chin and Rob, you guys, it was a few months in between. So would you say that was like the best path?
Yeah, I wish I had way more time. So the more time, the better.
Mm-hmm.
I felt very, very well prepped, I think, but I spent about 3.5 months working on it. But yeah, I think I would have been in hot water just based on the way I learn if I try to rush it through in the last few weeks or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I have similar amount of time as Rob. I study about like 3 to 4 months, and that gives me, because for me I want to like feel very well prepared before I take an exam. So that will give me confidence. So that was the approach that I take, and I think it worked pretty well for me.
Yeah, I would assume so. In addition to maybe some of the like practice exams or Planet Citizen course that you took, what are some other best ways to study for the exam? Maybe like study cards. Did any of you do any of that? Flashcards or anything like that?
Yeah, so I took the Planet Netizen class, and they also offered study cards, like an app. And so you can just like review the cards on your phone. I do that every night before I went to bed. So like when I fall asleep, probably wake up the next morning, the first thing I thought would be the what I remember from last night. So I think that's very effective. And also I took advantage of some YouTube videos because I was having a hard time learning about the law cases. And I found a channel, I forget the name, but there's a law case channel that kind of explains all the important law cases, and we found most of the planning cases there. And it explains a case in like 2 to 5 minutes, and that is a really good way for me to learn about them, because I think law is just kind of one of the hardest part for me. So yeah, that helped me a lot.
Cool. I didn't know about the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Rob?
I was going to echo everything you said. I think the one thing I found really helpful too was to take lots of practice exams. I made a point of gathering practice exams from the CPC manual and Henry Bedecker and some books I found online. And I took a practice exam like every week to kind of understand my weak spots. That kind of helped me focus on what to study next as I was getting closer and closer to the exam itself.
Let's see, someone just threw in the chat the very unofficial AICP study guide podcast through Spotify.
I used that and loved it. It was like one of the keys to my pass, I think.
Wow. Does the audience have any questions that you are thinking about, or any thoughts? Otherwise, do you, Elizabeth, Yi-Chin, Rob, have any advice for those who are planning to take the exam this year, whether in May or November, just kind of as they get mentally prepared for it?
I guess my best advice would, yeah, again, just take your time, use multiple different resources because not one resource is going to cover everything that you need. Unfortunately, it'd be great if there were just like one book that was like, just read this one book and you'll be fine. But it is really kind of a multimodal beast here. So just take your time, use all of the available resources, and contact, people that you know in the field for help or advice. I think our contact information should be somewhere. I'd be personally happy to chat with anybody who needs some one-on-one advice. So
Yeah, and I totally agree with Elizabeth. I think you need to take your time, and if you have time, it's better not to rush. And also, if you're kind of like a procrastinator, kind of like me, especially in the pandemic setting, when I took the exam, and if you are like hard to find some motivations to study for it, I would suggest a study group, because that was basically what my study group did. We keep checking in and we keep asking about our progress, and that really helps me to move forward. And also, I was having a hard time doing the schedule, and my study group kind of listed out the schedule for us. So that also gives me a chance to study, have a very structured learning process. And also our study group is also like a shared platform. Like if they find a good resource, they will share it. And so it really saves me a lot of time. If I look for stuff on my own, it will take much longer time.
I think I really echo both of those points. The one thing I would add is to say I sort of was the unofficial chair of the 2021 May cohort, a group working on it. And I think every single person did better on the actual exam than they did their practice exams. And everyone finished with plenty of time. And so I would just relax and take a deep breath. I think if you work on it, you'll do wonderfully.
Great advice. I see a question in the chat. Let me pull it up. And this might be also a question that Erin could answer as well, but have maintenance requirements changed? Have you experienced that at all yet? Because I know you just recently gotten your certification. And Erin, you might be able to answer this as well, yeah.
Sure. You mean certification maintenance requirements and how they've changed? Yeah. So there's the same number of credits that are required as they have been in the past. But there are, in addition to law and ethics, where we used to require 1.5 credits for each of those, in addition to other areas, we now have 2 other required components. There is a required equity credit that will now be in addition to law and ethics. We're only requiring 1 credit for law, 1 credit for ethics, and now 1 credit for equity. So still a total of 3 there, but we're adding another one that is going to rotate every couple of years. The current one is on sustainability and resilience. They're going to reassess the topic every couple of years. So that'll be a rotating one, but same total number of credits, which I believe is 32 per cycle, just slightly different requirements for their content.
So Erin, yeah, a quick question. In the past, the candidates have had to get CM credits? Once you become an AICP candidate, are you required to do CMs, or did that only click in when you become fully certified?
That only clicks in when you become fully certified. I don't know, one thing I was thinking, and I'm not sure about the answer to this, that if you want to start earning CMs before you get the credential, I don't know how far back you can, so there's a 2-year reporting cycle. So if you are, let's say in the fall, you're going to fill out the experience worksheet and you're pretty confident that you're going to get the credential. Within the 2-year window of reporting, you could start to earn some credits early, but it's not required.
Great, so
Not-
maybe,
oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
Jada, why don't we open it up in general for questions?
That's what I was gonna do, yep. Because I see there's a question in here about the study group again as well, so.
Okay, why don't you do that then? Oh, the study group from Andrew?
Yes, I was gonna let you answer that once we open
Okay.
it up to general Q&A.
So the challenge that we at MAP have with study groups is that we don't receive the names of people who are registered for the exam until just a few weeks before the exam. And so as you've heard from the panel, you need to be studying earlier. So one of the things that we have done, and we're going to try for the November exam, I just put a link in the chat for an interest form. If you are interested in studying for the November exam and would like to be part of a study group, we can try to assist putting that group together. So fill out that form, we'll get back with you. We'll I think most of these panelists participated in Zoom or some type of online study groups. So geography probably doesn't matter as much anymore as it used to. I know Ichan, you had mentioned that Planetizen, I think, does their own study groups, so that's another option. But this is something that we could certainly help with at MAP. Christina and I can coordinate on that. So November, we can't do it for May. I think it's just too close. Sorry about that, but we can support you for the November exam.
I have a quick question to the panelists or even to Erin about, did any of you take the exam the virtual way with the virtual option, or did you all take it in person? Took it in person. Okay, so Erin, for the virtual exam, can you explain a little bit how that works? Because I feel like I've heard that people kind of might have some struggle with it if they're like kind of looking and thinking naturally. We kind of look up, look down, and they're just wondering like, how is that format and taking it and that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I honestly don't know how the online proctored format is. I don't know how the proctoring works. So I think I would encourage anybody to reach out to that AICP at planning.org to find out more about exactly what the requirements are. I don't know that.
And we can do some things on our end also at MAP to try to get information out about that. I think there was a question, I don't know, Christina, if you want to bump in here too, monitoring the chat, about the Green Bible, the Green Book. Any thoughts? Do any of the panelists know what we're talking about?
Yeah,
Oh, you
I've
do?
heard of
Okay.
that. Yeah.
So did you reference the Green Book, which is, I can't even remember what the title is anymore.
Yeah, it's
Planning.
something super vague, like local government planning. And I've heard rumors about it. I looked it up and considered purchasing, but it was expensive and I had a zillion other resources, so I didn't use it personally. It seemed unreasonable to think that I could cover that much material. So personally, I didn't use it, but I don't know if the other panelists have other.
I mean, yeah, if you have time, you can review it, but I didn't because I think someone just shared a PDF version with me, but I think it's like a little too much for me. And yeah, and also I would prefer more like structured content instead of like going through all the book. So yeah, I've heard about it, but I've also heard good things about it. So it depends on your preference.
Yeah, I don't know how recently it was updated. is the issue. So you're probably better off using more contemporary resources that are on the website. So any other questions? We're nearing the hour here, but we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to ask their questions. I know there had been some questions about experience, and Erin, I don't know if you might want to qualify. Having experience means that you have to have specific tasks, I guess, is one way to describe it, that have you apply engagement strategies or the planning process. So some of what you need to go through, even though you have these lovely checklists now or other pieces that you can use, is to think through, you know, how did I apply a planning process in this situation? Or how did I engage the community? So those are, when you're thinking of experience, it can be non-traditional, but it has those components to it. So for those of you who are in transportation or, you know, other types of roles, you can find those within the work that you do that counts as your experience. Anything
Yes.
you want to add to that, Erin? Is that okay?
No, I think that's very well said. Yeah,
Okay.
we're still looking for you to demonstrate how you've influenced the planning process, how you've engaged people, and those criteria are in the checklist. But it's more than just saying you did something. It's really looking a little bit at the depth of that experience and what your responsibility was.
Mhm. Great. So I see the green book isn't even green anymore. Okay, thanks. Thanks, Erin. All right, any other questions? I really think this has been very helpful. I learned some things today, so glad that you could all join us. Christina, any final thoughts that you want to put out there before we go?
Thanks, Wendy. I don't have too many. I'm new to this position. So if there are ways that you need help, it would be good for us to know, right? So we can tailor our information in a way that's going to be most beneficial to our potential AICP candidates.
Great. So thank you, Jada, Yichen, Elizabeth, Rob, and of course, Erin, for making time for us today. We really appreciate it. We are going to take the recording of this session. We'll put it on our website at planningmi.org/AICP, so that if you have folks that couldn't make it today, send them to that page and they can get all of this information. With that, if you want to be in a study group, fill out that link. Otherwise, we're done for the day, and thank you all so much. Have a good one.